On the line with us right now is Ryan Flynn from the New Mexico Oil and Gas Association. Thanks for being on, man. Appreciate it.
TJ, thanks for having me.
Oh, there you are. Okay. All right. Fantastic. Yeah, I heard you. Yeah, you were on Bob's show, so I figured, well, if Bob's going to have you on, I got to have you on.
I'm with it. I also like the alien discussion. I was ready. I'm hoping that they have vehicles powered by our products, and that would help us out right now.
Gasoline-powered UFOs.
We don't have as many airplanes flying around, so we'll take all the help we can get.
Yeah, no kidding, man. It's strange times we're living in, huh, Ryan?
Yeah, that's an understatement. We've never had negative prices before.
That is how can there actually be a negative price? That's when I saw that I just blew my mind, really.
Yeah, it was a result of a strange market phenomenon because there was this financial tool called a futures contract that was expiring the next day, and people who were holding that contract needed to dump those contracts, and so they were in a timing crunch. And you had, obviously, with the economy facing so much pressure, so much downward pressure as a result of this virus and global pandemic, people holding the contracts for May really were caught in a pinch, and they had to unload them, and really it was remarkable because they had to pay others to take that contract off their hands. So it was a one-day deal, but it was still unprecedented. It's something we've never seen before in the history.
That is crazy. So, okay, is there any good news at this point? I don't mean to laugh. But
you're absolutely right. Good news is that from an oil and gas perspective, good news is that that oil and gas is the idea that it would have a negative value is really just a market phenomenon. People still rely on oil and gas for everything from how they move around to the products that they use every day, whether it be plastics or makeup. It's a valuable product, and the good news is that New Mexico is in the epicenter for the oil and gas industry in the world. So once we beat this virus, and once we start to resume our normal lives once again, the industry in New Mexico will be at the forefront of a recovery. So it's bad right now.
Yeah. I was going to say, of course, the state wants that to happen immediately, but obviously, do you have any predictions as far as a time limit goes? You guys, how far are you guys looking forward into the future right now?
Well, our industry is, we're a commodity-based industry, so we are experienced with dealing. Obviously, we've never dealt with something like this, but we're experienced with dealing and planning for market disruptions. So our industry prepares. We look at not only what's going to happen next month, but we look 5, 10, 20 years down the road as to how we're going to prepare. So, there's nobody can sit there and tell you with a crystal ball that they know exactly when things will recover. But we've heard a lot of people talking about an economic recovery and what type of shape we want it to look like. And I think people who are the most optimistic look at the hope that our economic recovery will be a V-shaped. Well, there'll be a rapid rebound, and I think people who are a little bit more don't share that optimism think it's going to look more like a Nike swoosh with a more gradual rebound. Certainly, what we can do, the policies that we undertake right now will dictate how close to that V we look, and I think as long as we're smart and we. And it's not just in our sector, it's across the board, but the more we kind of handle these issues carefully and with an eye toward the future, the quicker the recovery will be.
Well, what's interesting, and I find this odd too, maybe you understand this better than I do, the stock market. Because if you, I mean, obviously it went way down, but the stock market, I'm not going to say it's rallying, but it's rallying. I mean, it's gaining momentum. So what do they see? What do you think they see that we don't see?
Gosh, that's beyond my pay grade, but certainly from our sector, we're seeing a lot. I mean, people were being undervalued for the last couple of weeks, and we've seen, I mean, great companies with great assets who I think are attractive to investors, and we're seeing their stocks increase over the last couple of weeks because people saw just the amount that the prices that they were trading at don't reflect their value. So I think there's a lot of different people who are trying to look for buys before the market starts to steadily climb back up, and certainly that's the case in our industry.
I've heard so many figures, Ryan, being bounced around. What is the price where the industry can start drilling regularly again in New Mexico?
You hit the nail right on the head, TJ, when you said that it's you've heard a bunch of different prices because it varies from company to company. So there's no kind of magic line that everybody's good and everyone's bad at. It depends on each company, and each well for each company will have a different economics associated with it. So if you have to deal with transportation overhead, that makes that well a little bit more expensive if it's farther away from the pipeline and transportation. So you could, one company could have a couple thousand wells in New Mexico, and each of those wells will have a different value attached to it. But certainly I can tell you with confidence that our current prices, nobody's making money right now, and it's
right.
It can't sugarcoat it. I mean, everybody in our sector, just like so many other sectors of the economy, is feeling the pain right now.
Okay, I guess the state budget is based on about $50 a barrel. So we got to take a traffic break, Ryan. Ryan Flynn, New Mexico Oil and Gas Association. I want to talk to you about geopolitical politics on the other side, too, a little bit. All right, hold on. All right, we're back. Thanks for listening. DJ Trout. We got Bob on the board. We got Kid in the traffic room. We got Larry in the newsroom. We got Ryan Flynn, New Mexico Oil and Gas Association. Sorry about it, man. One of the things of doing the show from at home, I sometimes glitch myself technically, so I apologize. So, Ryan, obviously, what is going on right now in your industry is being driven by the virus, but it's also driven by the Saudis and the Russians. I know there was a deal made. So what's going on there? What's happening?
Yeah, really, as you mentioned, it's the virus. And if we weren't dealing with a pandemic, then the price war that you saw between the Russians and the Saudis would have had a major negative impact on the industry. But because of the pandemic and the evisceration of demand, that's really what has driven all of the downward pressure on the industry. It's been the pandemic. Now, Saudi Arabia really is the leader of OPEC, and it's a cartel of oil producing countries that agree on how much they want to produce, and they meet a number of times of the year. Russia is not a member of OPEC, but they have worked with OPEC over the last few years in order to voluntarily agree to limits on production. Russia, after a couple weeks ago, Russia was getting tired of production limits and really wanted to take aim at the U.S. oil industry, and decided that they were going to begin to flood the market and no longer agree to production limits. And they presented that to Saudi Arabia before an OPEC meeting. Saudi Arabia responded by first urging Russia to rethink that position, and then 24 hours later, Saudi Arabia doubled down and said, you know what, we're going to increase production too, and we can withstand more pain than you can, Russia. So Saudi Arabia announced an increase to production, even with prices at that point having been already just hit hard by the pandemic, and so that you saw, I think I wouldn't say good thing because the whole situation is terrible, but
sure,
because of the coronavirus, you had seen so much of a drop in price that the price war between Russia and Saudi Arabia had less of a negative impact on the industry than it would have otherwise. Certainly, if you didn't have the coronavirus pandemic, then that price war would have been very disruptive to the industry. And certainly a couple of weeks ago when Russia and Saudi Arabia came to an agreement, held an emergency OPEC meeting, and announced that they were going to put in place steep production limits and resolved the issue, you would have seen a major uptick in the market. But because the market's been hit so hard by the coronavirus, you didn't see the same type of bounce. You didn't see the same drop because of the price war, and you didn't see the same bounce because of the OPEC and Russia agreement.
Okay, so if I and tell me if I'm wrong, but I think the agreement that they came to doesn't go into effect until the middle or end of June, something like that. So they're still pumping a whole bunch of oil and putting it in the market. Like today, they're still doing that.
Yeah, they're just like the United States, Russia, Saudi Arabia, oil-producing countries. We're still working and still producing, but the market is really governing how much production is occurring and how much product is moving into the market. So,
right.
So even though it's announced to take effect in June, the reality is that the market has already really spoken and helped to limit production.
Okay, so is it true that we were actually running out of storage space?
Yes, storage is becoming an issue, and we've just never been in a situation like this. I mean, and you think about it, we've seen people talk about boom bust cycles of commodities industries, and what has emerged over the last couple of years in the Permian Basin, which is where New Mexico is really benefiting from just being that center of the oil and gas industry in the world, is that even when prices in the past you would see that bust accompany or follow declines in prices. Well, the Permian has been different. It has really, even when prices decreased, the Permian Basin kept production at really high levels. And so we're really flipping that boom bust cycle on its head in the Permian Basin. But nobody predicted a pandemic, and nobody could see this type of decrease in demand. And it's 100 years ago or 50 years ago. Think about society and how different it is than we are today. We really are a very mobile society, and there's just we're so interconnected now between different parts of the world and how we travel, how we trade, and I mean we just simply in this modern era have never seen life slow down like this.
Yeah, it's true. Very true. Look, we got a minute before I got to take another break, but I do want to ask you, how does the lack of drilling for oil affect natural gas industry and output?
There's the potential that with less oil drilling, that'll actually benefit natural gas producers, because we actually produce quite a bit of natural gas along with oil, and so if you're decreasing the amount of oil that's being produced, then you're also going to cut down on the gas that's produced along with the oil. And so there's an opportunity for the natural gas sector to actually benefit from the slowdown in the oil.
And somebody may have told me this, and I could be wrong. I got 15 seconds to answer this. Is natural gas literally a byproduct of the oil process, of oil producing process?
Yes, depending on where you're drilling. In southeast New Mexico, yes. In northwestern New Mexico, in the San Juan Basin, no. Yeah. They're drilling for gas.
Oh, okay, great, good to know. All right, Ryan, can you stay through a break?
Absolutely.
All right, great. We're talking to Ryan Flynn, New Mexico Oil and Gas Association. Very interesting, man. I'm enjoying this conversation. All right, we're back. TJ Trout, thanks for listening. Appreciate it. We got Robert Flynn with us. Hey, thanks for the long hold, man. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Ryan Flynn from the New Mexico Oil and Gas Association. And actually, it was kind of related to what Bob Clark just said on that little tease for his show. I assume that you guys are part of the Governor's Economic Recovery Council.
At 4 p.m., KKOB Radio reports
to try and
77.
Hold on a second.
We have represent.
Okay. So I assume you're part of the council to try and figure out when and how to open up.
Yeah, we have leaders in our industry that are serving on it, and I was talking to Stala Jervik from XTO, who's the CEO of XTO Energy, yesterday and over the weekend about some of the work that they're doing there. So,
does oil and gas have an official position on this that you could disclose to us?
I don't want to speak for any of the members of our industry that are on the panel, but certainly our industry's position on how the best way to get the economy back up and running is to defeat the virus. I mean, really, and that's not. It really is the best possible scenario for our industry. Is the sooner we defeat the virus, then we can resume back to normal, and you can get closer to that V curve. If we prematurely were to reopen and then have to close again because there's a bounce back or something else happens, then demand will decrease again, and we'll be riding, ups and downs. So for us, we've endured, like so many people, we've been enduring quite a bit of pain, and to really make it worth something in the long run, we've got to beat the virus. And so, following the advice of public health experts and making sure we put this virus in a rearview mirror is the best way for our industry to support the recovery. And we support the governor in moving forward and doing just that.
All right, so I asked you this question before, and again, you really don't know eventually when you think we're going to get back to where we were. Because you guys were pumping like crazy, and it was kind of New Mexico was literally a boom town once again. So will we get back to the levels that we were at? Do you think?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh.
We're still working. We sit in the best place to produce energy in the world, and we will rebound, and we will get back to where we were for the last 3 years, which was unprecedented levels of production and activity. And we anticipate that once we defeat the virus, and we don't know, I don't think anybody has a crystal ball and can tell you it'll be this day or time, but certainly within the next few years, we will once again take our place at the top of energy production in the world. And people are, again, the value of our product is just, it's obvious in your life. You use it. People need car seats for their children that are made of our products. People need cars that are powered by our products. And even if they have electric cars, they need components in the car that are made by our products. People fly on airplanes that are powered by us. So our industry is demand globally for hydrocarbons, for oil and gas products, is increasing. And once we're able to get rid of this virus once and for all, that demand will once again return, and New Mexico's is in the best place to produce oil in the world.
Okay, Brian, one more traffic break, then we're going to wrap it up on the other side. Hold on just for a second. All right, we're back. Ryan Flynn again from the New Mexico Oil and Gas Association. Thanks for being on this afternoon. Very interesting conversation with you. You've kind of ended on a positive note, and I'm probably going to end on a note. I don't know if you want me to end on this note or not, but I did want to talk about renewables, and I did because I'm thinking. The oil companies, you guys have to be invested in renewables, right?
Absolutely. We support energy and energy production, and
right.
There's this myth that somehow it's an either-or proposition, and that's just simply not the case. The way we consume energy really requires us to have a diverse set of energy sources. Certainly natural gas is critical to that, and that's taken up a lot of the market share from coal declining, but renewables are an important part of that. And our industry, you can't say you support industry, you support energy, and be against one source. I mean, really, we support safe, cost-effective production of energy. Period. And so we don't view it as an either-or proposition. We have a lot of people who are invested in renewables.
Right. I was reading an article. I mean, obviously there was an emissions problem in the Permian Basin right now, specifically from the natural gas. And what are you guys doing to try to curb that?
Well, I think the report you're referencing comes from a group that you can't ignore the political agenda of the people putting out a one-sided report. So I don't want to just dignify that or acknowledge that that report that was put out by that group is really 100% accurate. I mean, there's an agenda, and they're really pushing information that is I just don't think is reliable. That being said, climate change is an issue that everybody needs to address, and there's nobody that understands that better than our industry. And in fact, we've been investing billions of dollars in reducing emissions. And so we've had record-setting production for the last couple of years, and we've seen major decreases in our greenhouse gas emissions in the Permian Basin as well as in the northwestern part of the state. So I don't want to say that we disagree there's a problem. There is a problem. We believe in climate change, and we believe that we need to be part of the solution, and we're committed to doing that. And we, unlike others who sit around in coffee shops, produce reports, and talk about doing things, we actually invest billions of dollars and go out and get it done. And so our results over the last couple of years have demonstrated that we can produce at record levels and make major reductions in emissions, and we're committed to doing even more moving forward. We recognize that everyone has a responsibility to combat climate change, and certainly that's critical to us and what we do, and we're committed to continuing to do that.
I kind of like sitting around coffee shops. I'd love to be able to
too, but there's a lot of people in Santa Fe who sit around coffee shops and ponder and like to talk about the industry, and that's not how we operate. We're more, our industry is, there's a lot of people in our industry that have engineering backgrounds, and so they don't just like to talk about problems. They like to identify problems and then fix them and solve the problems. And that's really, it doesn't matter whether it's some type of economic challenge or it's a technical problem or an environmental issue. I mean,
you make a point. Yeah. You make a good point. Although Ryan, we got to end now. But the world does need ponderers every once in a while, though. Just they do.
Hey, I'm happy to have that. There's a place for ponderers and philosophers, and I'm happy to read them when I'm sitting in the coffee shop. But when it comes to solving problems, we need engineers and scientists to go out and also get it done.
All right. Hey, great talking to you. I want to have you on again. Can we do this again sometime?
I'd love it, TJ. Have a great day.
Yeah, I would too. Ryan, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Ryan Flynn, New Mexico Oil and Gas Association. This is TJ Trout, 96.3 News Radio, KKOB. Hold on.